Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, Fantasy Files Edition. We're going to be having a lot of solo episodes rolling on throughout the summer, specifically 100 in 100 days to go along with my 100 article series over at pff.com. So really hope you guys continue to tune in to our Wednesday and Friday editions, but we're also going to be supplementing that with some one-on-one goodness, people. It's the fantasy football off season now. We got a lot of time, a lot of topics, and I want to give each its rightful, allotment of time to talk about each subject. So today we're going to be talking Stefon Diggs, but truly, people, the goal, quarterback, backfield, and the passing game for all 32 teams throughout the summer. So thank you as always for tuning in to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, and let's get right into it because my goodness, what Stefon Diggs did last year, it was just incredible because we can look back now and say, okay, Josh Allen making the big improvement, Stefon Diggs featured number one wide receiver in an offense with Brian Daboll calling plays. Like, I understand looking back at 2020 in hindsight how good it looks, but that's not exactly what we thought going into this year, mainly, at least from my position, because we have not seen a great track record of wide receivers getting traded in the offseason and then all of a sudden putting up big fantasy numbers with their new team. Specifically, before last year, the only wide receivers that were traded in the offseason with their new team and put up top 12 numbers, it was Brandon Marshall, and he did it twice. Every other receiver, whether it was OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Brandon Cooks, Jeremy Curley, Jabbar Gaffney, there's some weird ones in there, Anquan Bolden. We had some other guys put up okay enough numbers, wide receiver 2 range, but never that top 12 wide receiver 1 level of production that we come to expect from some of these true studs. And in Diggs' case, and now DeAndre Hopkins' case, the argument that you could have made before last season to say why they're going to be the exception to the rule is that you usually don't see that talented receivers making their way in new situations because why would their team be trading them in the first place? So I get it from that perspective. At the same time, people, go back to before 2019. A lot of people, including myself, were awfully high on OBJ and Baker Mayfield. And, it just seems a situation where, hey, we're on it now. We recognize Stefon Diggs is his top 3 fantasy and likely real life receiver now. Just realized things were not quite set in stone going into last year. But look, people, he just had the most games ever with at least 6 receptions. Stefon Diggs' worst game last year in terms of receptions, since that's, usually the kind of signifier we want to start off with. 4 catches, 49 yards, 1 touchdown on 6 targets against the Rams. The touchdown just happened to come at the hands of Jalen Ramsey. So again, even in Diggs' quote-unquote worst performance, he was still making big plays. He was a top 24 PPR wide receiver in 11 of 16 games. Overall, only Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyreek Hill had more weeks as an overall top 12 PPR wide receiver 1. I've done cut-ups of Diggs' highlights. You guys have seen the man. But even if you're just a casual Red Zone viewer, we're all very well aware of what Stefon Diggs can do on the football field, and it's special. I mean, his route running, contested catchability. He led the NFL in total deep ball yards when he was just, not miscast as a sole field stretcher in 2019 with the Vikings, but that's all they asked him to do, and he did it better than just about anybody. So your reigning reception leader, your reigning receiving yard leader, like Diggs is the epitome of a true alpha number 1 wide receiver that can do everything you ask him, and it's great that he actually has the sort of target workload to go hand in hand with this talent. I mean, 162 targets last season, people. That's going to be a sheesh for me. I mean, led the league. Only Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins had a higher target share. I mean, yes, the Bills love to throw the ball. Josh Allen was one of, I believe, 8 to 12 quarterbacks that had over 600 dropbacks. Like, being the number 1 in that pass-heavy offense is going to produce these results, but even from the target share perspective, he was still at the top of the league with it. So I get it. I mean, Diggs, he's a top 3 talent. He has a top 3 workload. It's not rocket science. He's a top 3 receiver. But people, it really is crazy in Fantasyland how much more volume can matter than talent. I mean, you need to be talented enough to get the volume. So it's, kind of like the chicken and the egg thing. Is a receiver talented, and did you get the volume because he's talented, or do you need to get the volume to kind of show that you are talented? Whatever it is, people, this 150 target threshold, if you can get that in Fantasyland, we're looking at a legit wide receiver 1. Since 2010, we've had 65 wide receivers hit that 150 target mark. Among those, 59 of 65, 91% finished as a top 12 PPR wide receiver. The average finish was wide receiver 6. I mean, the only exceptions to this rule were 2012 Larry Fitzgerald, 2016 DeAndre Hopkins, and 2016 Allen Robinson. And, you know, I'm going to go on a limb here, everyone, and say that Josh Allen is better than the likes of John Skelton, Kevin Kolb, Ryan Lindley, Brian Hoyer, Brock Osweiler, Tom Savage, and new Packers quarterback Blake Bortles. Come on, people. Alpha wide receiver 1 workload. Great quarterback. Stephon Diggs, once again, needs to be a top 3. And really, I mean, worst case, top 5 wide receiver in fantasy land. So that's kind of the big background on him. And looking at, you know, just heading out of 2021 specifically, it's a roster that didn't change. We lost John Brown, we added Emmanuel Sanders, and the whole band is back together otherwise. Like Cole Beasley is going to get his low triple-digit targets from the slot, but there is no added competition for Diggs. And if anything, we should expect him to take maybe a step forward with Josh Allen, you know, in his second year now together. So it was such a weird COVID offseason last year. You know, one of the funnier storylines throughout the year that kind of came out was how Diggs and Allen, to kind of get on the same page, they were playing a bunch of Call of Duty together, and they just didn't even have a chance to run physical routes until it was something like in the summer, because again, it was such a wild offseason. So as good as Diggs was last year, really wouldn't be surprised if we see the efficiency move even higher. So before we get to our key PFF Lily stat for Diggs and also just my overall fantasy outlook, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. If you like fantasy football and if you like playing fantasy for money, you need to check out Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's got everything, including season-long and playoff best ball. Best ball is a season-long game where you draft a team like you normally do, but that's it. There's no in-season roster management. Underdog automatically selects your best performers each week, saving you loads of time. So go to Underdog Fantasy and deposit $10 using promo code PFF and get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's promo code PFF. Draft now at Underdog Fantasy. So for each of these fantasy files, I'm going to be giving a PFF Lily matchup stat. For those that don't know, Lily is my lovely 28 to 29 pound wiener dog. We're working on the weight, but she is usually sitting on my feet while I do these things, so I like to give her a shout out. And with that said, last season, Stephon Diggs had league high marks in not only receptions and total receiving yards, but also receptions and receiving yards, specifically on comeback or hitch routes. People, he averaged 4.59 yards per route run on comeback and hitch routes. I mean, Julio Jones is like the only receiver to average over 3 yards per route run just normally in a full season, and Diggs was even more dominant than what we usually see from Julio on these specific types of routes. So truly, I mean, what they did with Diggs last year, 52 catches and 533 yards on this. I mean, it wasn't the most like versatile route tree you've ever seen. Again, we know Diggs is one of the best route runners alive. Like, he can do anything you want to ask your number one receiver to do, but it was just, I mean, at times almost like boring watching him just consistently get the corners, flip their hips, respect the deep ball, stop, pick up your easy yards. So, I mean, if he and Josh Allen can just continue to have that chemistry on that one single route, I mean, hey, are we going to start calling Diggs Hitch Boy? Is it going to become the new Michael Thomas, way of insulting someone for being that dominant on one route? Whatever it is, keep on keeping on Josh and Stephon, because that is just truly incredible how good they have been on those comeback and hitch routes. Finally, everybody, my fantasy outlook for Stephon Diggs. I know I've said he's a top 3 receiver a lot. He actually is my wide receiver 4, so, maybe could have done a little better job throughout that, saying top 4 instead of top 3. But truly, only guys I'm taking ahead of him in fantasy redraft ahead of 2021, Devontae Adams, my guy A.J. Brown, and Tyreek Hill. I also have DeAndre Hopkins in that tier 1. Like, you can go to pff.com. I release my tier articles for every position. And in this tier 1, it's just huge target projections for grade A ballers. Diggs is absolutely part of that. If you wanted to say Diggs deserves to be the number 1 wide receiver drafted next year, because we should assume he's going to have the most targets again, and he just has more, not more QB continuity, but it's certainly looking a little better for him than Devontae Adams, depending on how the Rodgers situation shakes out. Obviously, Tyreek has to deal with Kelsey. We aren't positive AJB is going to get all these leftover targets. We'd like to think so, but, just run first offense and a little bit of uncertainty there. And, then it kind of comes down to DeAndre Hopkins with far more incoming target competition than Diggs had last year. So for me, again, Diggs, wide receiver 4. I get the arguments from wanting to move him higher. Either way, people, we're looking at anybody's idea of a fantasy and real life wide receiver 1. Quick note before we get on out of here, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving you a chance to lower the over-under on a featured playoff game. All players who place a bet on the featured basketball game will have a hand in lowering the over-under on the game. That's right, for every 1,500 players who bet the over on the select game, the over-under will drop by 1 entire point. Pretty good deal. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code PFF when you sign up to hammer the over. For every 1,500 people that bet the over in the feature game, the line will decrease by 1 point. Yes, this is your chance to improve the odds of the over hitting, so tell your friends and family this is a team effort. Hammer the over and improve your odds of doubling your money. It's promo code PFF for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. Restrictions apply. Max $25 wager. One per customer. Offer ends May 23rd, 2021. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. This has been a Fantasy File on Stephon Diggs. Again, many more to come throughout the summer. So thank you, as always, for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.